At this point, we're going to call the special meeting for general purposes of June 30th, 2023 to order. Jen, will you please take roll call?
Sure. Mr. Pazinski? Mr. Dabaskis?
Yes. Here.
Mr. Hardwick?
Here.
Mr. Keating?
Here.
Mr. Usavage? Mr. Perfetto?
Here.
Mr. Majer? Mrs. Cassatt?
Here.
Mr. Camus?
Here. I'd like everybody to stand, please, for a moment of silence and pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, before we get on with citizen comment, which we would ask everyone to keep their comments within the 3-minute limit. We'd just like to mention that we have on our agenda there under staff recommended actions number 4 and 5, the appointments of 2 assistant principals. The personnel committee met yesterday along with the administration, and we're recommending for the board's consideration Chris Gregaris and Michael Possessor for those positions. I'm also going to ask, because I know there's an interest, especially from what we've seen online, maybe some misunderstandings with the intent of the district's position on the dress code. So at this time, I would just like our superintendent to clarify what the district's position is on the dress code moving into the 2023-2024 school year. And following his comments, we will take citizen comments. Mr. Tosh.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. Let me first of all start out by thanking everyone for your attendance today. I have a couple bullet points with this because I want to make sure, because it's extremely important to you as it's important to us, that I want to make sure I'm accurate. So a couple bullet points, and I will be brief with this. We have had the dress code here at Wyoming Valley West since about 2012. And whether or not you agreed then or disagreed with this dress code, I can tell you that I'm very proud from the standpoint that at the time it was very much needed. And other school districts did make contact with Wyoming Valley West when it was first implemented and asked us for copies of it and duplicated it. So we were proud of that. It initially, as now, wasn't really popular with students and parents, but I have to say, and I complimented the students at the time and the parents at the time, they adjusted and they adapted. And I think it had a positive influence on the school atmosphere at the time in all of our schools. And then along comes March of 2020, and we run into a generational defining and an education altering pandemic. So as an administration, we kind of took a step back in September of 2019, or I'm sorry, September of 2020. And we said, what we're proposing is a provisional dress code. And the reason that we went with the provisional dress code was at the time, businesses were still closed. If you had a pre-existing condition, parents, grandparents, guardians weren't leaving the house, okay? People were out of work. And to be honest with you, at the time that we proposed provisional, we didn't know if we were going back that year. And for those of you that remember and had children in the district at the time, we started out virtual. We ended up going back hybrid. I believe at one point we went back virtual. We were all over the place, depending on the levels of the pandemic in the county. So we had to do a lot of adjusting and adapting at the time. And that was the reason for the provisional dress code. There were really 3 major elements, if you remember, to the provisional dress code. What we said at the time was we were going to allow hoodies, we were going to allow jeans, and we were going to allow shirts without collars. Again, being cognizant of the plight of parents during a pandemic. So let's fast forward to today, to June of 2023. The goal of our current dress code that we're going to propose, okay, is to redefine. We're not abolishing it. We will still have the dress code as we've had it in previous years. However, and I want to emphasize this because I've certainly got enough emails and calls on this. Our goal is not to punish the students who are in compliance. Let me repeat that. The goal is not to punish students who are in compliance. Those students are part of the solution. Having said that, the redefining the proposal for this dress code moving forward as of today will be as follows. We have had some issues with the hoodies, and from a safety standpoint, the multi-pocketed cargo pants. So hoodies and multi-pocketed cargo pants, we are not going to allow, again, for safety reasons. However, the jeans, as long as the jeans are not ripped or torn, just as we did during the provisional, that's acceptable. Okay, so the jeans are fine, they're acceptable. The last piece is the shirts without the collars. Okay, the shirts without collars are acceptable if they're not revealing, they're not controversial, they're not distracting, and they don't pose a safety threat. And the example that I've used in the past is if a student comes in with a collared shirt on with, let's say, Penn State or Valley West, that's appropriate. So if you choose to go out to buy a collared shirt, that's fine. If you choose not to buy the collared shirt, that's fine. But what we're going to emphasize, what the principals are going to emphasize, what the administrators in charge are going to emphasize, the jeans have to be appropriate and the shirts have to be appropriate. Okay, in short, articles of clothing that don't belong in a school setting, that's where the disciplinary consequences will take place. We want articles of clothing that are conducive to the educational process. And I don't think from the standpoint of being fair and I think it's a very clear policy. And I don't think from the standpoint of the school board and the administration, it's very flexible and it's very understanding in light of some of the consequences that families are dealing with in 2023. So again, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Hoodies and multi-pocketed cargo pants, we are not allowing. You're fine with the jeans as long as the jeans aren't ripped or torn. They're appropriate for school. Shirts, you can wear a collar. You can still wear a shirt without a collar as long as they are appropriate. And for those that wear articles of clothing that are not appropriate, then they'll be dealt with from a disciplinary standpoint. I want to conclude by saying I want to thank the administration and the faculty who enforced this dress code. I want to thank the Wyoming Valley West School Board for their flexibility, their understanding, and working hard, trying to make the educational environment better, which I do believe we've done. And finally, I want to sincerely thank the students who, again, that are part of the solution, the parents, the grandparents who are investing necessary time and effort to required in this day and age to raise children in an appropriate way. Thank you, Mr. Keating.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Koch, if I could just ask a question just for clarifying. So you, at the agenda, you gave us the old, much stricter policy. So we're not going to implement that. We're going to modify the
It's going to be
policy.
modified, yes.
We're going to modify the policy that's currently on our dress
Correct.
code policy.
We'll have that modified.
So that document will be modified and people could review it and update it as needed.
Right.
The old
In
one,
other words, the three pieces that I just said, the hoodies and the multi-pocketed pants are not allowed. The collars are fine or without a collar. as long as they're appropriate, and the jeans can't be ripped or torn. So it'll be modification of what we previously had in place.
Shirts full length, like no half shirts, no crop.
And
tops.
no half shirts. And
And that-
again, that's part of the past policy.
That's
Right.
that's part of the policy. And
Right.
just to take one step further, what Mr. Tosh said and what Mr. Dabascus said, there are permitted items online on our policy now and not permitted items that are in our policy. And we are only adding hoodies and multi-pocketed cargo pants to the not permitted. And very simply, it's going to be enforced. So what's online and what's in place is what we're following with the addition of hoodies and multi-pocketed cargo pants, and we're enforcing it. That's it in a nutshell.
And I think that's the most important to understand is, and I saw a lot of comments about and emails about enforce what you have, and you're absolutely right. We need to make sure, Mr. Tosh, that we set in place our enforcement of this policy. And that's key, that we have to enforce it.
Right, and I could tell you, Mr. Dabascus, I know at the high school and I know at the middle school, the kids, 95 to 98% of the kids have done a very good job over the years with it. There are a small element, again, that are challenging with the middle school administration and the high school administration, but I think both high school and middle school do a really, really good job of bringing the students in when they're out of compliance. And listen, they're very fair. They give the children an option. It's either have your parent bring in the appropriate attire, or if you can't do that, we give them a place up in the in-school suspension room. Their work is brought to them and they're expected to dress appropriately the next day. And if they don't, there's consequences to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, before I call on the people that signed in, is there anyone here that wishes to speak that did not sign in? Okay, thank you. Katie Hoffner. Rebecca Lavada. Yes, thank you.
And Rebecca, I'll remind you, we have 3 minutes. I'll start the
yes.
timer when
It
you
probably wanted
start.
to be 3 minutes.
You got it.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say I'm Rebecca Zavada. I'm from 44. Thank you, Mr. Tosh, for clarifying that, because I'm sure that's one of the reasons why we're all here. But one thing that I just wanted to address the board and just food for thought. I know there's a shortage of substitutes, and I know through the school year, and Mr. Tosh has been fantastic. I emailed him one time. He called me, he didn't email me back. He called me back within 15 minutes. I can't speak highly enough of this man. But just I know it's probably an issue. I know we want to keep our students safe and, their education keep flowing. But I know when they're short of substitutes, they're all in this auditorium. So I just want to see if there's something for the school board to even have a game plan and a backup game plan and ABCD, however far you have to go to keep these kids in some type of class setting, whether it's in here in Google Classroom or whatnot, when they're teachers. Every teacher gets sick. They can't be here at all times. But just to have a backup to a backup to a backup to keep these kids, structured and keep them going. So that way, maybe it will help with keeping them a little bit safer because they're not having all this free time in the auditorium as a free for all. I know they try to keep it structured in here, but I'm sorry, when you have several classes in an auditorium, it's kind of hard for certain individuals to keep track of all the kids. So that is my only concern. I mean, that I can think of right now. But again, I want to thank everybody and thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Tosh.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Bethany Weiss.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
Thank you. You did address a lot of the dress code, which was appreciated. I do have some questions though regarding it, when are we going to have access to this amended dress code?
The dress code is already online.
But the one that was shared with this isn't what it's actually going to be, he said.
We'll get an amendment on this afternoon for you.
Okay. Are they going to be allowed to wear hoodies to school and then locker them or not? Don't even want them to bring them into the school?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Are they going to be allowed to wear hoodies to school, take them off and put them in their locker? Or do you not want them to even wear them to school?
The hoodies,
Yeah.
if they were, again, if they're worn to school, they have to go into the locker,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And then is the stance on leggings for girls still going to remain how it states in what was
What the
posted?
current dress code is, yes.
So their shirt must go down to their knees?
Yeah, those are the two different, I believe that one was laxed with the amended
Yeah,
after
so that's
COVID.
why I want a clarification on that because that seems a
I
little
think
extreme.
that kind of covers two things, the leggings and tight clothes, I think is, so I think we'll definitely have to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like making their shirt have to go to their kneecaps is a little excessive.
Okay.
There's no need for that. So I just.
What would
wanted
be
to-
your alternative?
I mean, they're covered when they're wearing leggings, but if that's a concern, why not just a shirt that's loose fitting and covers their bottom, and
Oh,
stops there.
okay,
There's no reason
that's
to
it.
go to the kneecaps.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely,
that's easier for parents to buy tops that would fit that.
understood.
But other than that, you guys have addressed everything that I plan to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Space.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Matthew Space of 44. Question I had, I just wanted some clarification on the budget here. It seems there was an increase in the budget from the last proposal, which is okay, as well as an increase in the millage for tax rate. Is there any explanation for that? I mean, the last budget that I saw that was proposed last meeting seemed to have a $4 million plus surplus at the end, or positive at the end. So I'm just trying to figure out why the increase in the tax rate as well as the increase in the budget.
At the last meeting that we had, there are significant capital needs of the district. There are not nearly enough capital funds to support the needs, and I want to emphasize the needs, not the wants. And the budget was modified with a 2.5% tax increase to be invested into the capital needs of the school district.
Okay. I'm sorry, can you just give me an example of what a capital need would be?
Heating, ventilation, air conditioning,
Building
building,
improvements.
grounds, facilities, equipment.
Okay,
Stadium. And then the big difference in, at least, from last year's budget of 80+ million to 100 and whatever million, is because this budget included our ESSERS fund. So next year's budget will probably be around the 80-90 mark, not 100 and some.
okay. Well, I wasn't actually referring to last year's budget, the 80, I think it was 83 million, maybe. Excuse, that number escapes me right now. I was actually referring to the last meeting when there was a budget placed somewhere in the $104 million range. And as I looked through it, it said we had a beginning balance of 5 million, something, go through everything outlined. And then at the end, we were budgeted to have a $4 million surplus.
So the state requires us to maintain a surplus, or highly recommends it. So the surplus is technically not to be, I mean, it can be used, it's sort of that rainy day fund. So the capital fund is a little bit different, and that's specific to building needs or improving our structure. So we have to maintain for that rainy day. You don't want to have a zero surplus. That's going to definitely get you in trouble.
No, I mean, it was a great thing that there was a surplus at the end. I mean, having a
Right.
balanced budget and having more money left at the end is a great thing. But again, that's why the budget that was brought up just 2 weeks ago had a $4 million surplus. And now there's another one here that is increasing taxes, and I don't understand it.
That surplus is going to be drawn down to support the capital needs. And just as we built the fund balance from the prior school year to this school year, we have to hope to be able to continue building a fund balance to sustain operations. But we went well in the weeds on this at the last meeting. basically we've resolved or established a baseline for our operating needs. But we really need to dig into capital and what remains in the accounts today versus what the compelling needs are for the school. There's not enough money to even come close to touching this.
Okay, for building improvements, heating, air conditioning,
Correct.
so on and so forth,
Yes.
everything. That was not included in any line item in the proposed budget for the year? That,
There are capital line items in here, but again, for instance, we have about $14 million in ESSER's funds, the federal funds to support the HVAC improvements, but we're authorizing up to 17.5 million in improvements that are real needs. And we still haven't put a full dent in what needs to be done just with the HVAC.
okay, well, it still seems a little confusing to me, but I will take your word for it and hope that it works out the way that we plan it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jennifer Gable.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Gable. I'm from Sawyersville. I came loaded for bear to discuss the dress code policy, but the wind has been effectively taken out of my sails. So thank you for that. I do have a couple questions. Up until last week, my daughter was enrolled in a virtual charter school, and she's going to be coming back to brick and mortar for the upcoming school year. Granted, everything I hear is hearsay, but I've heard that the heaters go out and kids can see their breath in the classrooms. The air conditioning goes out and the kids are passing out sick to their stomachs from heat. Will there be any dress code amendments made in those situations? Like a plain sweatshirt isn't going to be enough if they can see their breath or things like that.
As far as any adjustments to the dress code, a lot of times based on either weather conditions or other variables, we'll leave that up to the building principal. The foundation of the dress code is what we explained today. And I would say like 98% of the time, 99% of the time, but I'm not going to sit here and say if conditions warranted a change in it based on a recommendation by a principal to a variety of extenuating factors, that we won't, obviously will do what's best for the health, safety, and welfare of the children.
Other than that, thank you.
Thank you. And again, just to follow up on what Mr. Space addressed, Ms. Gable just validated why we need to make these investments into our HVAC systems and buildings and grounds immediately. Molly Dusler.
Hi, Molly Dusler of Edwardsville. I prepared a really long thing about the dress code, as apparently everybody else did, but I would just like to say that thank you for listening to everybody that was making comments. I made a survey and over 1,000 people answered it about the dress code. So thank you for listening to everybody, and that's it.
Thank you. Grace Lopez.
Hi, Grace Lopez of Kingston. As Molly said, I was here to talk about the dress code, but Mr. Tosh, you've already covered everything. I just have one question. I was wondering what the standpoint is on sweatpants, like if students are allowed to wear them during.
Whatever the current policy of the dress code is with the sweatpants, that has not changed.
So students are.
And again, that's online at this point.
Okay, well, that's all my, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah McCracken. Okay. Kate Pokrivka.
this is incredibly unpopular, but my name is Kate Pokrivka and I live in 44. I am actually in support of the full dress code the way it was in 2012. And to the strict dress code naysayers, I ask, do you know what's more expensive than collared shirts and khaki pants? Tuition at 2 private schools. The behavior at the middle school and high school is so bad that I won't send my kids there. They're at private schools and it's pricey. I still have 2 kids at Dana Street and the behavior is getting worse there too. The behavior problems have been worse since COVID, not just anecdotally, but as evidenced by the need for the district to hire more school resource officers. Either COVID itself caused us to regress, or the lax dress code had some impact on kids' behavior, or something else is going on. But I say, let's look at this scientifically. Here's a hypothesis. The dress code has something to do with behavior. Bring back the old dress code for 1 year. Monitor kids' behavior, record incidents of bad behavior, and if there is no improvement, scratch this idea and try something else to fix the fighting, bullying, and culture of disrespect at some of these schools. One more thing about safety. A dress code makes students more easily distinguishable from kids who enter the school but don't belong, which happened in this district this past school year. And those 2 kids faced weapons charges. They weren't there to look at the trophies. So I would just ask the district to consider the old dress code. And finally, while I'm not making any friends here, you know that I come to most of these meetings. And I happen to notice that Mr. Majer is seldom in attendance. He was here last time, but he hasn't been here for many meetings. I feel his absence is disenfranchising the residents of Plymouth, even though I'm from 44. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I just want to follow up by saying we do take the dress code very serious. And if you read the prohibitions that are online, and the key is, as Mr. Dabaskis said earlier, we enforce our dress code that is online right now with the addition of the hoodies to prohibitions and the multi-pocketed cargo shorts. I think we're making substantial progress in changing the tone of the buildings. I think that to fully implement what once was may be too much at the timing right now of a financial burden on parents and students to completely, revert back to what we did. I think we're striking a very good compromise, and I think we should give what we're implementing the school year. And if what we're doing isn't working, come January, February, that's the time we should start discussing whether or not what we've implemented works, so everyone could have ample time to prepare if a change is needed. And again, unfortunately, what's on hand financially, both the operating fund balance and the capital accounts, are not adequate for supporting the needs of the district.
And Mr. Keating, may I present one thing?
Absolutely.
Through the leadership of Mr. Tosh and the board, Wyoming Valley West has taken the lead in the county with regard to trying to figure out really what's happened since COVID with regard to discipline issues and behaviors, and trying to come up with a systemic fix for it. We've had a task force led by those individuals who I just mentioned, our board and Mr. Tosh, that has included State Representative Coffer, Rincabbage, Senator Baker, stakeholders from all the police forces in our communities, the district attorney's office, juvenile probation, trying to figure out local magistrates, how we deal with the discipline issues systemically and what's the best course of action. We're continuing to have those meetings basically on a monthly basis with lots of ideas being exchanged, lots of ideas as to how we can get ahead of the curve with regard to discipline issues, including expulsion proceedings that we've instituted since our firms become part of the solicitorship. And we're taking, I think, giant steps forward in trying to deal with the perception of discipline issues in the schools and trying to make our schools the safest they can possibly be with the help of all those people I've just mentioned. Those meetings are going to continue, and we're going to hope to have improvements on a regular basis with regard to the discipline issues that you've mentioned.
Attorney, can I just add real quick to that from the standpoint, because I think it's important from the standpoint of defending Wyoming Valley West. And Kate, you've always been very respectful, and I appreciate that. But when you make a statement that says the disciplinary issues post-COVID, just to be fair, those disciplinary issues weren't exclusive to Wyoming Valley West, I can tell you. Everybody went through them as we went through that isolation period and kids coming back. And I will say this, from the standpoint of, again, I'm going to speak about the middle school and the high school. Since this school board was proactive and added additional security at the high school and the middle school, in addition to the state-of-the-art metal detectors, the number of incidents we had in both buildings through the leadership of both buildings, the last 4 or 5 months decreased. So as Mr. Keating had said, I think we're on the right track with everything. It was referenced before. I wish that there were more students going into education, so we had more subs. So I think that would significantly decrease some of the issues that we're having disciplinary wise. But I do think we've made some real strides in that area, and we hope to continue that this coming school year.
Yeah, Kate, one thing that our meetings on the task force have demonstrated is that it's not a Valley West problem. It's a nationwide problem, really. And that all of the systems are being taxed to the max with regard to some of the issues that have come up, including the juvenile justice system, juvenile probation. There's a systemic problem that needs statewide attention, basically needs nationwide attention. And we're going to continue to push to get things done so it'll improve the quality of life in our district.
Mr. Keating, not to go on too long on this, but I think it's important to bear out that these meetings we've had with the legislators and the county and local law enforcement, we yielded the probation, and you gentlemen could explain better, but that's one of the outcomes that we've realized from meeting with these folks. And I don't know what we would call it. The probation office used to, Mr. Tosh, maybe you can explain.
I think from the meetings, we've benefited from some new changes and a little bit more innovation in terms of having probation officers more visible in the school, in addition to having more access in different areas of the school. And I think children and youth is going to be a little bit more involved with it too. Again, our legislators have been very proactive with it. They've listened to our concerns. We've made them aware of it. They've taken time out of their day. And it's not window dressing where they're just coming and saying this is part of our job. I think there's a sincere desire on their part. And I think they have some good plans moving forward to try and attack what some of the challenges and the concerns are that we have. We're very fortunate to have proactive legislators and a proactive school board, for some of these concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Tosh. Mikhail Haslak.
Hello, I'm Mikhail Haslak from Kingston. So I just have, a few questions about the dress code, as a lot of people here today do. So I really feel like the behavioral does not have to tie with the dress code. Going off of what the other person before me said, first of all, I thank them for being very respectful with it and not just anger. I appreciate that. I don't think that 2 inches of fabric around the neck and a button is going to change behavior. And I feel like expression is a very big part of our high school, and it's what sets it apart from a lot of other schools. I feel like if everyone were to wear a single color shirt, that would really take a lot out of what our school is and what our school takes pride in. And I feel like that's very important that we have that. I know there was a time that we didn't have that. And I appreciate that we do now. I know a lot of people who are very happy we don't have the dress code anymore, but I haven't heard any actual students. I've heard parents, but I haven't heard students who are actually taking part in the dress code say, I really miss the dress code. I wish we had that back. But I have heard people say, I'm very glad we don't have that anymore. Now I just have a question. So on WVWSD.org, where I'm getting this from, which I'd assume is curated by you, all the information on there comes from the school board. Under the announcements, special meeting, public notice, if you click on that, it says documents. One of the documents has the dress code, which says last revised June 30th, 2023. And it has information that contradicted what was said at the beginning of this meeting, stating that denim pants should not be allowed. And shirts must be plaid, striped, or a solid color and must have a collar. So I'd like to see if you can have any clarification on that.
No call. No, I'm sorry.
I think, Mikhail, we've clarified that already, that what's online, what was posted with the agenda was inaccurate.
Okay.
And we're following the actual policy that's online that we're going to enforce, with the inclusion of the addition, I should say, of the two prohibited items being hoodies and multi-pocket cargo pants.
Okay.
Other than that, the policy that has been online is what we're following.
Mikhail, on the left-hand, if you go on the website on the left-hand side where it says dress policy, that's the current approved dress policy.
Okay.
Where you were looking at it, the agenda was going to be the proposed change, which is null and void. So if you want to look at what's going to be modified, is the one where it says dress policy on the main page on the left-hand side.
Understood. I just assumed that since it said special meeting public notice, that would be what we were working off of. And also the fact that it was last reviewed today, I thought that would be what we were working off of. Thank you.
It was reviewed because it was proposed, but then we taught it was never voted on or approved. So you have to provide the documents to let you know what we may approve. But like we said, don't even worry about that one. Look at the policy that's on the main page, WVWSD.org. I think on the left-hand side. Now, I don't know what it looks like on the phone, but somewhere on there it says dress policy.
Understood. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Mikhail. We have one more interested citizen, Elijah Sirota.
Hello, I'm Elijah Sirota from 44. Thank you, the board, for letting me speak. Most of my questions were answered by previous questionnaires, but I would like to say if the board would be interested ever in doing a scientific test with the dress code, I would wait a few years for the children affected by COVID to either have a few years of leniency so that they may have a normal childhood or be completely out of the school district by then. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. And thank you, everyone who took the time to come here today and address the board with your concerns. Moving on to general recommended actions 1 through 10. Are there any questions on those items before we vote? At this time, then I will ask for a motion on.
Just do we have to change 7, the wording of it?
It won't be as presented.
It wouldn't be as presented. It would just be, I think you need to just table that whole thing, right? Number 7, which talks about the as presented, right? Because we're just really just saying that we're enforcing what we have now, right? So that could be.
With 2 changes.
Do you want number 7 to basically, validate the enforcement of the existing online dress code policy with the addition of the two prohibited items that we
Something like that.
discussed.
Yeah, but it doesn't, yeah, just don't want to put it to that old.
Okay, so just to be clear for the record, that number 7 is to enforce the current dress code policy as on the school district website, with the inclusion of 2 new prohibited items being hoodies and multi-pocket cargo pants.
Or shorts, right?
Correct. Are we good with that? Okay.
I think we have that's a great point, but I think we have the right to, in this policy, it says the board at any time could modify the policy. So I think what we can do is review that portion of it with the yoga pants. But to be honest, in the revised policy, it does not mention the yoga pants past or the shirt past it. So, but I think we probably will address that.
At this point, for general recommended actions, I would ask for a motion of the board to approve items number 1 through 10 with the modifications that we made to item number 7.
So moved. Second.
Under question? Jen, will you please poll the board?
Mr. Damascus,
Yes.
Mr. Hardwick,
Yes.
Mr. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Profetto,
Yes.
Mrs. Cassatt,
Yes.
Mr. Kamis.
Yes.
General recommended actions passes. Moving on to item number 5, staff recommended actions. And again, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, the appointments to the 2 positions of assistant principal are Chris Gagaris and Michael Possessor. Are there any questions on staff recommended actions? At this time, I'll ask for a motion on staff recommended actions.
So moved.
Second.
Under question? There being nothing under question, Jen, will you please poll the board?
Mr. Damascus,
Yes.
Mr. Hardwick,
Yes.
Mr. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Profetto,
Yes.
Mrs. Cassatt,
Yes.
Mr. Kamis.
Yes.
Staff recommended actions passes. At this point, I will ask if there are any board member comments. With there being no board member comments, could we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.